Well, welcome to the webinar today, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be a short one. We're going to be talking about active prime. We've got some indications that some of the seed that may be used as either pedigree or in fact bin run may be of poor quality because of the fall we had. And this year especially, maybe we have to start thinking about providing some nutrient to the seed to help it get up and going. Maybe improve germination and vigor. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the science end of active prime and the nutrients in it. And then I'm going to talk about the other active product we have, which is a seed dressing for pulses. A lot of people maybe don't think we have a product for pulses because we have to take zinc and so on out of those products because we're using rhizobium on them. But we have a product that I'll talk about at the end. So anyhow, let's get going. So we're going to try and help this seed get going and germinate and get up and running and get this this first true leaf up out of the ground. And you can see that there's a lot of endosperm in here that feeds this. I'm going to talk a lot about wheat, but I'll show you some shots of other plants. So let's not waste any time. So what is active prime and what does it do? It's a seed coating containing nutrients and a bioactive molecule, a biostimulant, which improves germination, boosts roots, and early growth. And it also provides some environmental stresses, and the young plants have basically the up and get going energy to lead to the production of a reasonable shoot. Now, for some of you, you should take a look at the webinar I did called Seed Viability, Germination, and Vigor. Can we do anything? Because there's a lot in there that I'm not going to cover here, which will give you some idea on why we have so much variability in terms of the seed quality and the nutrient density of seed. So here's just some shots of what the product looks like. These are just on seed, and you can see, if we look at this up here, you can see that on different crops or different seeds, you have different locations of where the material winds up. On wheat, it winds up here at the brush, and here at the germ, quite frequently up in the germ in the right-hand corner here. And you can see right down here, the germ gets that. I'm not sure why that happens, but I've seen this in other products that I've worked with over the years. And the red coloring in there tells you where it is. On barley, you can get it splattered all over the place, but largely close to the germ end of it. And I'll show you in the next slide some shots. Now, you can have a seed like this, and you take a look at this seed in the bottom left-hand corner, and you can see that the germ has actually been damaged. Well, a plant may or may not germinate, but there's a good chance it won't. But just because the germ isn't damaged doesn't mean that that seed will germinate. There can be internal problems with things like zinc and nutrients, and maybe it just never had the proper time to finish in the fall time. So let's take a look now. If we put on a nutrient dressing, what happens? Well, take a look at some of these shots, and these are showing barley germination up here in the left-hand corner, and you can see that the seminal roots are coming out here, and you can see in this one that the roots are coming out here, and the shoot, which is houses the first true leaf, is rising up. So this is what we want to help this plant do, and you can see that there's a lot of root hairs already formed, even though these seminal roots are very small. Again, here you can see the same thing. I threw this in here, even though this isn't the product we would be using on peas, just to show you about how it winds up on that sort of ridges on the pea shoot. And you can see here, this is where the seed was actually attached in the pod, and a lot of the nutrient winds up there. So we have the germination here. So these soluble materials can be in the environment of the root. And you can see already here, this is after 96 hours that we have root hairs developed already on the radicle of the pea plant. The other thing, and these were just germinated in Petri dishes, you can see how much difference there is in terms of development between seeds. This one isn't going to germinate, this one's behind, this one's a little further advanced, and this one is quite advanced. You can see here a close-up of that, and then when you go to 96 hours, you can see that this seed is really taking off, and there's a lot of root hairs to secure those nutrients right close to the seed. But the seed will feed that shoot for quite a long time, probably 8 to 10 days. And when you shove it into cold ground, the longer it takes to germinate, the less energy the plant has to deal with that. So perhaps putting on a seed dressing with some nutrients is going to be a good strategy, especially with what we're hearing about some of the issues with germination. And in some cases, we're getting reports of not bad germination, but very, very poor vigor. So we're starting an experiment with 2020 Labs to take a look at just how much of an impact we can have by using seed nutrient treatments. So what's in active prime? Well, there's a biostimulant technology that's going to help with gene regulation and germination, root growth, seedling vigor, and stress management. So that's all fine and dandy, but and that works in harmony with the nutrients, and you can see the nutrients here. And what we have in there is nitrogen, some phosphorus, some potassium, some boron, manganese, and zinc. And this is a common mix in seed nutrient dressings. And I'm going to go through each one of these to try and explain why those nutrients are in there and show you why that's really important to the seed. So here's how it all works. Nitrogen. We all know that nitrogen is the major nutrient that plants use after hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen. And nitrogen is used to build the cells, to build all the proteins from the amino acids. It's involved in DNA formation, RNA formation, chlorophyll, nucleic acids, you name it. So we need some nitrogen in there to help the seed get up and going and feed that shoot so that when it comes up, it's ready to roll. Same with phosphorus. Under these cold conditions that we're now seeding earlier and earlier, we need that energy for respiration and photosynthesis once it gets up and going. And phosphorus is also part of DNA and RNA, and phosphorus covers the entire plasma membrane around every cell. So those two nutrients, nitrogen and phosphorus, are key to building the cells. When we get to potassium or potash, it is used to expand the cells in what's termed osmoregulation. In other words, the potassium with water takes that tiny little cell that's developed and it uses hydraulic pressure and expands that cell so the shoot comes up and the radicle in the roots start growing downward. And it also is involved in stomatal closure a little bit later. So once we get that shoot up, we want some potassium there to really help with all of that. Boron, and we're always hearing about how low boron levels are now in Western Canada. There are a lot of thoughts on boron, but everything I know about boron tells me that the major role of boron is in cell wall structure and membranes. So that when the cells are being built, there's a lot of calcium, things like pollen tubes and root hairs, which are single cells, need that boron in there in order to secure the calcium in place and provide strength to the cells in the roots and also up in the plant itself. So it's involved in a lot of other things, hormones, meristematic tissue, reduced seed viability. If you haven't got enough boron, you have some reduction. And it's involved in fixation of nitrogen and nodule development. And the reason that is important in nodule development, along with calcium and other things, is that the plant builds the nodule. So when it's building the cells for the bacteria to fix nitrogen, it has to use a lot of calcium and a lot of boron during that nodule building process in order to make those cells. The last two, manganese, which is, if any of you follow me from time to time across Western Canada, I always talk about manganese and photosynthesis. The first thing that happens in photosynthesis is the water molecule is split. And that requires manganese and calcium and chloride to do that. It's also involved in scavenging free radicals, which are produced when the plant is in stress. So this is one of them, manganese superoxide. So that's just one. And the other one that is important is here with zinc. We have a copper zinc superoxide dismutase, which is also scavenging those. So all those nutrients help deal with the stress that the plant is under. And as we stress it more, we get more free radicals produced, and we need those nutrients to deal with that. So zinc has always been really important in terms of seed vigor and germination. All the enzymes in the plant, all the enzyme groups contain zinc. And when the seed is germinating, and if you go to my previous PowerPoint, you'll see diagrams of that. It uses zinc to activate a lot of the enzymes in the cells, and I'll show you that right away. So I was a believer that if I wanted to see what nutrients were important to the plant, I should go to the embryo. And I found this published a while ago, and it's a variety I've never heard of, but I think it's relevant. Take a look at what's in the embryo. It's only 2% of the actual seed is embryo, but look at this. 10% is phosphorus, 9% potassium, 20% is zinc, 17% is manganese, and 13% is boron. And then you have all the rest of those nutrients stuck in the endosperm. But to me, that's really sort of a guiding light in terms of why those nutrients are so key in the germination and the early development of the seed. So here we have a wheat seed, and you can see that when a wheat seed is mature, the only thing alive in it is this little red line here called the aileron and the germ. So the seed takes in water, and it starts a whole process of enzyme activity to make things like amylase, which break down the starches. They reduce the amount of abscisic acid, which drives the seed into dormancy, and increase the amount of gibberellic acid to help grow the shoot. There's a lot of zinc and a lot of enzyme action going on. This tissue here called the scutellum is how the seed feeds the new developing shoot. How a seed germinates is it forms a node on the scutellum, and as this nutrient is dissolved, it feeds it. And here you can see this is the first true leaf hiding within the coleoptile, and this is going to move down and become the radical, the first root. So if your seed is not matured properly, does not have the total nutrient content that it needs to form, because in the fall it didn't have access to those nutrients, or maybe it was short of one of those micronutrients, we have a reduced health of that seed. So what can we expect? Well, we can expect increased germination. Here's a wheat seedling that this is the coleoptile with that first leaf inside of it, and here are the first two seminal roots. There are 5 seminal roots on wheat, and you can see here's a root that is developing in a lateral root. So we get early root development, and we're protected against those oxidative stresses, which are key, and vitamins are involved in that, and a whole bunch of flavonoids and other things. We get increased shoot development, we get better water use efficiency, and we increase the potential for a yield, because we know that our maximum yield potential is when we put the seed in the ground. So if we have poor seed, we don't get germination, we don't have healthy growth, we have issues that are going to haunt us throughout the season. But I want to point out one thing. Just putting on a seed nutrient is just the start. If you don't support that plant throughout its growing season, that seed nutrient that gives it a little boost in the first 10, 20 days of its life, or maybe 30 days, depending on what product you're talking about, it's not gonna save you, so to speak. Now, I'm not gonna cover this, but one of the things that we see with Active Prime, and there's lots of data on it, and if you go to our website and look at our product portfolio, you can find all this data. We don't get huge yield increases, 2, 3, maybe 4 bushels per acre, but the one thing about Active Prime, it has been very, very consistent over a lot of years. We always make more than what it costs to apply that. So here are just some of those kinds of increases, and you can go to our website and take a look at that. I'm not going to cover that here. So that's it. For this, it's just a short little webinar. You can look at it on your phone. On for each one of the products that we have, and just a little bit of an update before you get into that time of the year when you're going to be considering using those products. So get your seed tested. Make sure you have it checked for vigor. If everything is honky-dory, well, you know, you're not bad shape. But if it looks like it's a little weak in terms of vigor, then sure consider application of this product, Active Prime.